The launch of a rocket is always a moment of suspense, fire, smoke, and the ride into the unknown. And on November 4th, 2025 at 10:03 p.m. Central European Time, Europe will once again be in the spotlight. With its fourth mission overall, the Ariane 6-2 will carry Sentinel 1D, the newest guardian of the Copernicus program, into orbit. Of course, here at Mars Chronicles, we will be streaming the launch live with commentary and analysis. So tune in and be part of it. You can think what you want about the Ariane 6, but it's definitely an epic masterpiece of engineering, and that's why we're going to watch it live. But what's behind this mission? The cargo being transported is especially exciting, which is why we're going to take a closer look at it. From the cost to the geopolitical games, let's break it down. I'm Serwin and this is Mars Chronicles. Let's go! First, the basics, when and where. Liftoff is on the 4th November 2025 at 6:03 p.m. local time in Kourou, French Guiana. That means 9:03 p.m. UTC or 10:03 p.m. for us in Central Europe. From Europe's spaceport at the Centre Spatial Guyanais, where the Ariane family has been rocking for decades. Mission Vol Ariane 265 is the fourth overall and the third commercial flight of Ariane 6. The rocket is built by the Ariane group and Ariane's Pass is responsible for the launch. This will be the 356th launch overall for Ariane's Pass. Sentinel 1D will be placed into a sun-synchronous orbit at an altitude of 693 kilometers. Separation from the upper stage will occur after 34 minutes. This is the 7th Sentinel satellite launched by Ariane's Pass and the 53rd overall of the European Space Agency. A milestone for Europe's Earth observation and climate research. What is the mission? Sentinel 1D is part of Copernicus, the European Union space program for Earth observation funded by the European Union with European Space Agency contribution. It is the most advanced system worldwide, providing continuous free data for authorities, companies, and citizens. That means you can access all the data from the Copernicus constellation. That's 20 to 30 terabytes of Earth observation data every day, which are indeed used here and there. But the potential lying dormant here for research and business is enormous. Copernicus is a strictly civilian program. However, it's important to know that Copernicus data is also used for security purposes, for example, to monitor maritime borders or to support European Union missions abroad. However, the data used for these security-related applications is generally not classified as secret, as is the case with United States spy satellites. Only in very specific cases where the security of the European Union is at risk can access be restricted. By the way, you'll find the link to the database below. You might be asking yourself now, what's the point of all this if Google Maps exists? Excellent question. While Google Maps maps the entire Earth, it has one crucial disadvantage. The images can sometimes be several years old, and we in the space community know how much can change in just 1 or 2 years. The Copernicus images have a much lower resolution than the Google Maps images, but with the advantage that you can jump between different recording dates and time periods as you wish. It should also be said that while these data and images are nice to look at, they are not made for the human eye. Algorithms can do much more with them than we can. On the one hand, the resolution is not sufficient, and the sheer number of images and the enormous size of the Earth would overwhelm any person and even entire organizations. Thus, for example, algorithms can accurately determine what is currently growing on a particular agricultural field and what stage it is in based on color profiles. That's how it works in all other areas as well. That means I can track the development of a region very precisely over time. I'm not getting paid for that, but let's get back to the Ariane 6 launch. An Ariane 6 launch costs about 75 to 115 million euros, depending on whether you fly in the 6.2 or 6.4 configuration. For Vol Ariane 265, the Ariane 6.2 with 2 boosters is more on the lower end, let's say 80 million. But the catch is the subsidies. The Ariane 6 is a child of the European Space Agency member states. With 3.8 billion euros in development funding, France, Germany and Italy pump up to 340 million euros in every year to keep prices competitive. Up to 38 million euros in subsidies per launch. The promise was that the Ariane Group would receive enough development funding for the development of Ariane 6 so that they could bring a competitive launcher to the market. Now the thing has to be subsidized even more. The model is a so-called public-private partnership where governments close the gap so that Ariane's rocket can compete against SpaceX. Without it, a state would be more expensive and Europe would be more dependent on US rockets. Criticism: yes, it feels like welfare for the industry, but it ensures sovereignty. I made a detailed video with criticism of the Ariane Group, which is linked below. That's why we won't go into it further here. Back to the first Ariane 6 missions. The maiden flight on the 9th July 2024 was a success with some limitations. 3 payloads in orbit, but the final deorbit maneuver failed. As a result, the payloads that were designed to return to the atmosphere also did not come back and remain as space debris in orbit. But what was the reason? The so-called auxiliary propulsion unit in the upper stage, which pressurizes the fuel tanks and provides small thrusts, exceeded temperature parameters during the second ignition attempt. The Vinci engine was therefore unable to restart. But the core mission was successful, and Europe once again had its own access to space. The Ariane Group had managed to get us out of the launcher crisis that they had gotten us into. How did you fix the auxiliary propulsion unit error? Is it fixed? Quite simply, with a software adjustment to the cooling sequence before ignition, tested and ready. Flight 2, Ariane 262 in March 2025, carried the French spy satellite Composante Spatiale Optique 3. This mission was considered a complete success. The auxiliary propulsion unit also worked perfectly. Flight 3 in August 2025 delivered an institutional weather satellite for EUMETSAT into a polar orbit. Also a complete success. A highlight will be the first Ariane 6.4 mission with 4 solid rocket boosters for Amazon's Project Kuiper. If you're wondering, no, the Ariane 6 cannot lift off without solid rocket boosters. The Vulcan engine lacks enough power for that. During the flight's first phase, solid rocket boosters provide most of the power. The contract was awarded in 2022, 18 Ariane launches, 6 launches for Kuiper plus 12 New Glenn from Blue Origin and 38 Vulcan from United Launch Alliance. A total of 83 launches for over $10 billion. For the Ariane, it's estimated at 2.5 to 3 billion euros with 35 to 40 satellites per flight. The deal is great for the Ariane Group and Ariane Space, but ironically you and I are subsidizing. So the European taxpayer pay for Amazon's constellation. In fact, we're helping to compete with Bezos' Stalin. Oh yes, before I forget, the taxpayer doesn't see a cent from such commercial income. It all stays with the industry. We only subsidize the development of a rocket from the last century, subsidize every state, and in return we get terrible press work from the Ariane Group and not a single cent from the commercial successes. That's a nice way to live, isn't it? But let's take a look into the future. What's the next mission? A Galileo L14 is planned for the end of December 2025. That's impressive for the Ariane Group. VH266 with 2 Galileo satellites goes into a medium Earth orbit and will be the 4th operational flight. By the way, Galileo is the most advanced and accurate civilian navigation system in the world, better than GPS. What about the others from China and Russia? What does this show? The Ariane 6 reaches full speed in just months. I'm intentionally not saying high speed. Its predecessor, the Ariane 5, managed a total of 117 launches from 1996 to 2023. So on average, 4 to 5 per year with a maximum of 9 in 2008. A giant that made Europe a leader, but also dependent on an industrial value chain that primarily created value and didn't look far enough into the future. Theoretically, the Ariane 6 can launch 12 times a year, since the ship that transports the rockets between the European mainland and the spaceport in South America can make one round trip per month. So, responsive space access. No such luck. Because military and disaster relief organizations often need access within a few days, not months, like with the Ariane 6. A brief digression to Themis and Prometheus, the projects of the Ariane group, which in our opinion are unfortunately lagging a bit behind the pace set by SpaceX. Themis is a prototype for a reusable booster, which is the lower part of a rocket that is supposed to land after launch and take off again. Powered by the new Prometheus methane engine, which is supposed to deliver 100 tons of thrust, like SpaceX's Raptor. Recall, Raptor 1 delivered about 185. Raptor 2 delivered 230, and Raptor 3 delivered 280 tons of thrust. An Ariane manager once said they've matched SpaceX's capabilities for a long time. No, obviously not. Not even with a decade of lead time and billions in taxpayer euros that were thrown at them. Just like SpaceX did in 2012 with their Grasshopper prototype, they also want to make their Themis prototype hop in Sweden. Only 13 years later, the first version of it has been at the test facility for a few months now. Since then, we haven't heard much. Prometheus is supposed to reduce the cost to 1/10 of the current Vulcain engine. Prometheus is also supposed to power the next generation Ariane Next, which is planned for the 2030s. By comparison, SpaceX achieved its first booster landing in 2015 and now counts over 450 reuses, saving billions. Europe is pumping in 56 million euros, but without the scale effect, it's light years behind. It's a race that Europe needs to catch up in, but that's exactly what drives innovation forward. To sum it up, you could say the Ariane 6 with Sentinel 1D is a step toward Europe's independence. From subsidies to Kuiper deals, will Europe catch up? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this briefing, subscribe to Mars Chronicles and leave a thumbs up. A huge thank you goes out to all channel members and Patreon supporters. If you also want early access to our videos, you can find all the information below in the video description. My name is Sirwan and this was Mars Chronicles. Thanks for tuning in. Per aspera, ad astra.